Florida's Gulf Coast is on high alert this morning as Tropical Storm Idalia churns toward the state. A White House official telling CNN that FEMA is pre-deploying emergency personnel to Florida today. The storm is expected to intensify into a Category 2 hurricane before directly hitting Florida Wednesday. Hurricane and storm surge watches are in effect along the state's west coast, including Tampa Bay. CNN meteorologist Derek Van Dam joins us now. Derek, the time to prepare has to be now, is that right?
Yeah, without a doubt, because we anticipate the earliest arrival of tropical storm force winds across the southern Florida peninsula roughly about 6 a.m. on Tuesday. And as you head a little further north of Tampa Bay into the Big Bend area, we're talking about roughly 12 to 4 p.m. on Tuesday. So you don't want to be setting up your hurricane-proof shutters, for instance, in the middle of tropical storm force winds. So now is the time. It is your last full day for that opportunity to prepare your property. 65-mile-per-hour winds. It's basically splitting the difference across the Yucatan Channel, and this is important. It is now moving north at 8 miles per hour, and that's actually increased in forward speed since the 5 a.m. Eastern Standard update. Now, we do have a major hurricane in this forecast. That's important. If you're just waking up this morning, that wasn't explicitly in the forecast yesterday, but now it is. So we know the waters are extremely warm over the eastern sections of the Gulf of Mexico, so anything can happen. We've seen this story unfold time and time again. There's some explicit wording from the National Hurricane Center for rapid intensification, so we'll be monitoring that closely. So how will this impact the storm surge? Keep in mind we have a full moon that will be impacting this, and the potential there for inundation of up to 10 to 11 feet right near that Big Bend area. The other concern is inland flooding, because the potential for 4 to 8 inches, perhaps up to a foot of rain is possible. And notice this is not just a Florida storm. This moves across the Carolinas and into southern Georgia as well. Timing this out, latest information from the global model, from American Model. Look at that. That's Wednesday morning across that catcher's mitt, the Big Bend area. That's going to push up a lot of water, but also a lot of wind. So this is a very interesting way to kind of diagnose the threats for wind across the Florida peninsula, and particularly throughout the Tampa Bay region. We want to obviously see that trek further west, but that's just not the case. The potential there for tropical storm to up to Category 1 hurricane winds exists. And then look a little further north towards Cedar Key. That's where we anticipate the potential, at least, for winds of 110 miles per hour. Any jog to the west or east can have major implications. And this is very important too, Phil. Notice the wind swath going right through the Florida peninsula. So Gainesville to Jacksonville, Tallahassee, you also have the potential for destructive winds from this storm.
And we are taking a look at Governor Ron DeSantis as he prepares to make remarks about Hurricane Idalia, as we just said. Let's listen.
We also have FDLE on site today evaluating security on campus and making recommendations for any additional infrastructure improvements. Also, per the request at yesterday's vigil, we're able to do $100,000 to the charity that's supporting the victims' families, and those funds are all coming from Volunteer Florida. So we're going to continue to work with those folks in the days and weeks ahead. As of 0800 today, 90 miles south of Cuba, Tropical Storm Idalia continues to gather strength. It will become a hurricane today, and it is forecast to reach landfall as a major hurricane, Category 3. I think it's important to point out, if we were sitting here 3 days ago, a lot of people thought it would end up being a tropical storm. Then they said, well, maybe a Category 1. Then yesterday it was, oh, maybe it'll hit Cat 2. Now there really doesn't seem anything to prevent it from continuing to strengthen. And we've seen this before with something like Hurricane Michael that continued to gather strength. So this is going to be a major impact, and Floridians should expect that this storm will be a major Cat 3 plus hurricane. So please prepare accordingly. The National Hurricane Center currently has hurricane watches in effect for the Gulf Coast from Sarasota County all the way up to Franklin County in northwestern Florida. And this track, if you look at how the models are, there's a general agreement on the track that it's going to take. There's a lot of agreement that it's going to be, somewhere between north of Tampa and Tallahassee. But anything that wobbles with this storm could change that. So pretty much anybody on the west coast of Florida, I mean, you can see major impacts. And so please prepare accordingly. We did submit a pre-landfall declaration to the federal government last night. We anticipate that that will be approved. I have expanded our state of emergency, the executive order, to include 13 additional counties. So that'll be 46 that are under a state of emergency, of course, on the Gulf Coast, but also as you look at the track of that storm, you're going to see northern Florida, north central Florida, northeastern Florida counties affected as well. So all of those counties are under a state of emergency. Our state EOC is operating at a level 1, 24-hour operations. This is what we do. Now, all counties in the path of Idalia should have their emergency operations centers activated now. Please request aid from the state as soon as possible. There's a relatively limited window here. If you request aid, Kevin and his team are going to get it to you. But if you wait until 6-8 hours before the storm hits, it's going to be much more difficult to make that happen. So tell us what your needs are, submit those requests, and Kevin and his team are going to work to fill those requests as expeditiously as possible. Evacuation orders. I urge Floridians to heed the admonitions and heed the directives from your local officials. There are going to be evacuation orders issued in all these Gulf Coast counties in the A and B zones. All the barrier islands, places that are low-lying on the coast, you are going to be told to evacuate. So just understand that, and that'll be true probably from Pinellas, maybe even Manatee, all the way up through the Big Bend. Keep in mind, if you're told to evacuate, you do not need to drive hundreds of miles. You do not need to leave the state of Florida. You basically need to go to higher ground. Almost every instance, you can go tens of miles to a shelter, to a hotel, to a friend's house, whatever works for you, and you'll be able to ride out the storm. The key is to not be in those areas that are going to be hit with big-time storm surge and that are going to potentially have life-threatening situations. And so tens of miles, not necessarily need hundreds of miles, and the more people that do a more limited evacuation, more local evacuation, you're not going to have the highways and the roads clogged. So it's not necessary to try to outrun the storm. Just get to higher ground, get in a structure that is going to be able to handle the hurricane, ride it out, and then you'll be able to go back to your property and expect.
And we've been listening to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis as the state prepares for Idalia, saying that there will be evacuation orders, telling Floridians to prepare accordingly. Still watching the track, but saying that if in fact your county gets an evacuation order, you don't necessarily have to leave the state, but seek higher ground and prepare accordingly.